So for chiropractic helping with the spine, a lot of times the chiropractors would adjust. Now, adjusting the joint helps with the motion. It helps with reduction of inflammation buildup. But what a lot of people tend to forget is there's also a muscle imbalance around the area. So for chiropractic helping with the spine, a lot of times the chiropractors would adjust. Now, adjusting the joint helps with the motion. It helps with reduction of inflammation buildup. But what a lot of people tend to forget is there's also a muscle imbalance around the area. So conservatively, we would treat the pain. We would find the dysfunction, the area. Of course, we adjust. I'm a chiropractor, so that's what we do. And the physical therapist would treat the muscles and the area through our different methods. But importantly, especially with scoliosis, it's a lot of it is compliance. Now, if had no access to, if it was just straight up adjustments, traditionally it would take a lot of sessions, right? But if you think about the logic of what scoliosis is doing and what's going on here, we could teach also. Part of it is compliance, and there's stuff, exercises, stretches that should be done at home that could help the scoliosis if it is treatable. Is there a time in life that it's treatable? Because the concern is here, especially with concerned parents, or even people that have scoliosis themselves, they'll be like, too bad. Well, I should have known this when I was younger. Now it's too late for me, right? So we go back to the X-ray, to that lat bending X-ray. So that's how we know if it's correctable or not. Now, as people get older, the muscle compliance, I guess, the way, the pliability, the healing, there's components to healing. As people get older, it's slower. So we have to be more realistic. It's a bit slower, but not to say that it's not treatable. But some people want to catch it early. Now, there are several times in life where scoliosis usually progresses, and it usually happens in puberty. And the next one would be, for women, would be childbirth. The reason why it's in childbirth is because of the hormone relaxin. So all the ligaments, the joints, they get lax, the muscles in preparation for childbirth, and then the scoliosis gets worse because everything's lax. Right, so those are the critical times in the time of someone's life where you want to monitor that. Now, during puberty, when the bones are fused already, then the chances of progression will be lower. That's called the riser grade, and it's measured in X-ray by checking. There's this area here. I mean, this model here, spiny. It's already fused for this model, but for a child or a teenager going through puberty, there's still a secondary bone up here that looks like an eyebrow that actually tends to fuse over time. So that's how you know whether the person's done puberty or not. The secondary site of ossification. So there's a grading system. So if the person there's still a long ways to go before puberty is up, and there's already early signs of scoliosis, constant x-rays have to be done 3 months, 6 months, to always check if it's progressing, because that's important. So you want to catch it early. Now, there are, like I said, there's some that most of the time it's puberty and childbirth, but there are instances where there are children that have scoliosis as well. Okay, now parents notice that because their child is walking funny. Something is not right. Like there's winging in the bone back here, the scapula, hunched down like that. Not always, but usually, if the person is before puberty and there's a scoliosis, most of the time there's something structural that's causing it. Whether structural meaning there's something in the area, like a hard structure that's not right, that would be causing that scoliosis. As an example, someone that has a problem with the hip, like it's fused. There's congenital issue here, like it's sacralized, meaning to say this part is part of the spine, and there's a grading system. It's called Castelvi to check that. There could be a true short leg discrepancy, meaning to say one leg was what is really truly shorter. Now, when someone is born, no two legs are 100% equal. It's the other side of the body. It's a limb, but the body could compensate for 2 centimeters of difference in bone length, at least up to here. Now, when it goes over 2 cm, then we have a problem. So, the body would always want patient's eyes or the person's eyes to be level with the ground. When something's not leveled, it will make another curve, or it would do something to have eyes always level to the ground. So when a child has scoliosis, X-rays are needed. Chances are there's some structural problem in the area. Okay, if they consider it idiopathic, well, idiopathic until proven otherwise, I guess. But an investigation has to be made to why the child is doing that. It could be on the foot as well. Some people have collapsing arch, club feet, whatever. There's something that's wrong with the foot that's causing the scoliosis going up. It happens from the bottom going up. Okay, because there are chiropractors that, not to discredit that, that's also true, that the problem when you have the scoliosis, after all that compensation, you would have a straightened neck on the upper part. Like this part has to have a curve like this. Now it goes straight. So the focus for treatment is there, and I agree so much to the fact that the body has several sites of proprioceptors, or how the body feels, and the neck is a major part of it. There's a lot of critical structures there. The pelvis is an important part. The foot is an important part. Well, to some extent the hands, but for our purposes we'll omit that. And so treatment there is good, but that's where the difference here is. Usually, in my opinion, the problem with scoliosis happens from the bottom to the top, not the top to the bottom, right? That's very important to treat, and we treat that certainly, but for this type of problem, look from bottom going higher. It's like a leaning tower of Pisa, right? Is there a genetic component to scoliosis? Yes, there is a genetic component to scoliosis in general, because there's different types of scoliosis. If a parent has scoliosis, both parents have scoliosis, chances are the children will also have scoliosis. So there's a familial component to it as well, and it happens to more women than men, in a ratio of 5:1. So when women have it harder, I guess, more than men. Now, interestingly, with scoliosis, this was several years ago. Research were trying to find what is the cause of scoliosis based on those genes. The theory was maybe it's muscular, the muscular pull. Sure, that's like we mentioned. There's a functional component to scoliosis, like a muscle imbalance that pulls one way versus the other. That was one theory. The other one, since it's genetic in relation, they thought that maybe the end plates, the plates of this. So, this is the spot. This is the vertebra, and under it there's the disc, but in between that is end plate. So it's the interface between the disc and they said maybe there's a defect there. They did some experiments, but the third theory of it was maybe it's hormonal in nature, because, like I say, it progresses during pregnancy. So they were suspecting relaxin as the culprit, and then it's puberty. What happens when someone goes to puberty? There's a range of hormones. So, and then another on top of that, they say, why is it affecting women 5:1 versus men? So they tested all the hormones by bombarding it, taking out hormones. It at least maybe not relaxin, but the other ones didn't have much of an effect, at least not in those papers. So they kind of ruled the hormones out a while ago. It's counterintuitive because we would imagine that it would have been hormonal based right from the get-go, but apparently it's not. Maybe some research later on would show otherwise, but for now, that's what we're going for. The end plate, they tested for sclerosis, not so much either, but sometimes there is, but the conclusion was it's more muscular in nature. I mean, to say there's a muscle imbalance, so maybe the hormones cause the muscle imbalance, but I said there's usually some structural issue that's causing it, right? That's what people don't realize. As I mentioned, 28 to 30 degrees of scoliosis, so that's getting on the high side. I mean, if you go below 10 degrees, then that's considered listing, that's minor. 10 degrees to around maybe 28, 30, then okay, that's monitoring, especially if the person's going through puberty. But when you say, let's go to the point where it's 28 to 30 degrees, up to the point where it's close to 40 degrees, now that's usually a bracing consult. So there are many types of braces available, right? Some more effective than others. But what is seen here is the more effective braces are the ones that overcompensate for the problem. What do we mean by that? If there is a curvature here one way, let's go back to that, let's say it's 35 degrees. If the brace, so the person has to wear a suit, a brace, the brace brings the spine back to zero. When they take out the brace, it's usually not going to go to zero. If it was 35, it would be almost halfway between the end. So the brace that's more effective, if it was 35 this way, it's 35, it brings the person 35 the other way, which is uncomfortable. But when then they take it out, it now goes closer to zero. So there's an overcompensation that is needed, the more effective ones, right? But the problem with bracing now usually is compliance, and that's a fact, right? There are papers that measure that. The reason why it fails usually is because the person could not stand wearing that, because it's warm, it's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, and especially for kids or teenagers, people make fun of them because they have these weird contraptions on them. That's why if it was a more conservative scoliosis, or the patient so wants to, the conservative treatment is the way to go if it is amenable to bracing. Usually if it's amenable to bracing, it's amenable conservatively if the person gets treatment and does the homework at home consistently. And that's probably, it's a lesser evil than having to wear something so uncomfortable. But still, if a person can't have a situation where he or she does nothing, right, and expects the world for it, right? There should be some effort done as well, right?